Hey everyone, Diggs here for Lockpickers United, and today I'm going to show you how I cast a couple of keys out of pewter. I've had so many issues getting this video released that I am dubbing in the garage while it's raining and my neighbors are out talking, so hopefully the audio doesn't suck a whole lot. But anyway, so these are the materials I used. On the left hand side is the important stuff. I got some high temp silicone, mold max 60, and a scale that can use grams. Now the mold release there in the spray can I didn't wind up using, but that's much more important if you're casting with resin or plastic. And then you can see here I'm using cardboard, a box cutter, and some hot glue to build mold boxes. And that's, I think, probably the cheapest way to do it. You could just use straight up cardboard if you don't have foam core board. It really doesn't matter. It just needs to be able to contain the rubber. So like I said, I've been having lots of issues trying to get this video released, and so I'm going to lower my standards just a little bit and make sure that it actually gets done today. As you can see here, I am sort of sizing my pieces based off of the key sizes, and I'm going to attempt 3 different keys here. I've got a Mercy key, a Mercy, however you want to say that. I think it's Mercy. I've got a lockout tagout master lock key. And then I've got a Paris Fontaine lock that I am borrowing from Correct Jeans at the moment. I actually owe him a tension wrench for that. So maybe I'll make that a video too. But as you can see, I'm just kind of sizing out panels pretty close to what they need to be. And the idea here, sort of the name of the game with expensive silicone, is use as little of it as you can get away with. And since I'm making very thin, very small things, I don't need real thick walls around them. And so you can see my side pieces are, half size of the larger walls. And I make sort of a rectangle shape here and get it ready for pouring. The most important seam on these is the bottom. Obviously, gravity is going to force that silicone down and out, and if there is a hole, it will find it. So don't waste your money. Make sure that your mold box is complete, because hot glue is way cheaper than Mold Max 60. And while I'm on the topic, it is expensive, but it's a pretty awesome product. I sort of had one of those light bulb moments when I was looking at different types of silicone for some other projects that weren't lockpicking related. And I noticed that this one had a temperature range that was way higher than any of the rest of them. It goes up to something like 560, 590 degrees. I don't know. I could look it up, but so could you if you're interested. So anyway, the allowable temperature for this stuff is higher than the melting point of pewter. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, I could cast little things in pewter. And then a couple of steps removed from that, I thought, I could cast lockpicking stuff with this. I could make tools, I could make keys, I could, all sorts of things. And so I think it has lots of potential for very limited applications, right? Because pewter's a pretty soft metal, but the fact that you can make a metal into a shape and this size and form factor and all that is exciting to me. And I don't know that it really has a practical application in the field. Let's say you're a locksmith or something like that. Probably not going to help you at all because it takes 24 hours for this stuff to cure. But it's still really fun that you can do this and it works. Now, out of these 3 keys, one of them does not work. And if you want to, now would be the time for you to play the game. Guess which key doesn't work. And you'll see in the end which one doesn't. So here I'm using paper clips just to try and make little hangers because I want these keys to sit not up out of the silicone but up off of the bottom, because if it's on the bottom there's a potential for it to be way too thin or even non-existent on the bottom, and if you pour pewter into that, it's just going to come right out the bottom hole. So I kind of mess around with this for a little bit. I put them all in there and wind up having to make second holes for some of them, just trying to adjust the height. And it winds up not mattering. Those little holes in the foam core aren't big enough for the silicone to run through. It is liquid form, but once you mix it up, it has a higher viscosity than water, let's say. So it's not going to just dribble out of the side. In the past on this channel, I've had lots of issues with audio and spent a lot of time editing videos. And you'd think I'd be pretty good at it by now, but I'm just not. So I'm still sort of developing that skill. And I'm also sort of trying to work on beating down the perfectionist streak and just going with it. So here I'm opening up the Mold Max 60, and you see, as soon as I poke a hole in it, I instantly make a mess. This stuff is actually quite messy, and so you should be wearing gloves. I should be wearing gloves, and I'm not. And you definitely shouldn't do this on anything or near anything that you don't want to have red stains on it, because it will stain stuff. And it will not cure without the this agent that you have to add. It's a, 100 to 3 parts mix by weight. So you'll see I put 400 grams in here, and then I add 12 more grams of the curing agent. I'm pretty sure this scale's not real precise, but it seems to do an alright job. And when I do mix things correctly using it, the finished product is always good, so I trust it enough. So you want to mix this stuff slow. Here I am not taking that very advice, but you want to mix it slow, and you want to try and put the brush or mixing stick or whatever it is down at the bottom of the container and then move it around, because you're trying not to form bubbles. Bubbles in molds are not good, because anywhere that there's a void in a mold, you're going to fill it up with whatever you're casting in it. So if you have lots of bubbles in your silicone, you'll have lots of bubbles in your finished product. You also cannot skimp on shaking, mixing before you put the two together, and you definitely can't skimp on it after you put them together. It has to be well incorporated, otherwise it does not cure properly, and it will not take on the properties you need for this. So there we are, all mixed up, and you'll see I'm pouring this from out of camera view, but it's even higher than you think it is. I'm pouring it from as high as I can control it. And that's because when you pour it like that, it sort of allows gravity to pull that silicone into a thin stream, and that forces out any of the bubbles, the larger bubbles anyway. And you'll see once I have it poured, there will be small bubbles that come to the top even after you're done pouring. And that's fine, that's normal. You want them to come out, that's a good thing. The one on the left in particular, I've seen a number of bubbles come out of already. So that's pretty much that. It takes 24 hours for Mold Max 60 to cure correctly, and that's at the right temperature, so you really can't mess with it. You shouldn't mess with it anyway. And at this point, I think I went and smoked or something, which is why I'm off screen for a while. And because I just said the word smoked, I'm going to smoke now. So I'm pouring this stuff into some test tubes too, and this is for a different project. It's even for a different video, but I left it in here because the less I edit out, the less time I spend editing and re-recording and redubbing these things, the more of them I can actually get out there. And that's always been the problem. Trying to keep up with putting out a ton of videos in a week was too much, and holding down a job and having a family and all that at the same time was just too much. So none of those things are going away. I still have a family and I still have a job, but instead I will get out more videos by not editing them to death and not re-recording the audio a bunch of times. So it'll be a little more unfiltered, a little less polished, and I mean, not that they were super polished beforehand, but hopefully you still enjoy the content enough to keep coming back and watching. So now I'm actually done pouring things, and I adjust those pencils and the marker a couple of different times. I never actually got around to telling you what those are for. So I'm making little bar stock molds. The idea there is I can pour some pewter into those and get small bars of pewter that I can then turn or shape, and the purpose is so I can make pins. So this is the demolding process. I highly recommend that you don't use glass test tubes to make molds, because you'll wind up having to do what I have to do here, and it's just not the safest thing in the world. You'll see I pull out some canvas in a second here and wrap them all up in the canvas and then smash the glass with a hammer. It was actually kind of a lot of fun, but I also failed to use any sort of protective gloves for my hands while I'm picking the glass off of it, and while I don't get cut, the odds are good that you will get cut, so please don't do that. Not that you would be making molds in glass test tubes anyway. So I'm trimming off all these corners, and that's just because I like how it looks. It has no bearing on how the mold actually performs. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So there, you can see I smashed all the glass up, and now I'm picking it off with my bare hands. Not the best idea I've ever had, but it worked, so, argue with my results. While I got some time in the middle here, I figure I'd tell you a couple of things. If you're actually an avid follower of the channel and you're watching this whole video, then you'll get some information here. So we started a t-shirt fundraiser to sort of try and get giveaways going for the channel again, and so far we've sold 25 shirts, and the goal is 50. So if you're interested in supporting that, there's a link in the description, and you can get a sweet shirt, black shirt with a LPU logo on it. I think they're pretty sweet anyway. And all that money, you'll see on the fundraiser, all that money is coming straight to me, but I promise you I will use it to purchase locks, and then people will get free locks again on this channel. And if you've been around for long enough, you'll remember we give away good locks. There's black belt locks, red belt locks, real good stuff. If you're brand new and you don't know what the belt system is, you can go all the way back to, I think, Mentorship Monday number 3. I'm guessing, but I think it's number 3. That sort of describes what the belt system is and how it came about. And I think it's just a really fun system to use to learn lockpicking. Here the video is all fuzzy because I'm out of focus. Hopefully that doesn't last real long. What I'm doing is cutting in a V sort of a V shape and taking off small chunks at a time until I reach the bow of the key. I'm trying to find that first reference point. And there I've got it. I've caught the focus. You see that I found it. And now I'm going to cut straight down the line of that key. Which one is this? I think this is the Mercy. Yeah, so the Mercy is the only one that I cut in this direction. And I thought I had it all figured out as far as, you know, which ways I was going to remove which keys. But I wound up doing that one kind of poorly. This one here is the Paris Fontaine. Doing the same thing, just kind of cutting down, and I find the loop at the top of it, the bow of the key, and then I just start going down the side of it. I'm actually really pleased with how the lockout tagout mold came out, and the ingots. They all actually really impressed me with the results. Silicone's just a sort of amazing material that it can pick up so much detail. You see, my plan for that ingot, or the bar stock mold, is to leave it in that other test tube that I didn't smash with a hammer and pour into that. This pewter does get real hot, but it doesn't get hot enough to melt glass. Here I'm pulling out the petroleum infused sand and a ring mold, and just a big old piece of ABS plastic that I used to pound the sand into the ring mold. And some baby powder? Yeah, a bottle of baby powder. Because at this point I'm planning on using a combination of the silicone molds and this sand that I use to mold more crude shapes all the time. And I realized before I actually do it that that's just not a good idea. You don't want sand and other particles and stuff in a silicone mold. You just want to pour it in straight. So here, what I'm doing is cutting myself a place to pour, and while it is going to change the shape and it's going to sort of make lumps on the bow of the key, it shouldn't actually change its ability to operate, because all the parts of a key that matter really are down near the tip. So that's the Mercy mold all dusted up. I used the baby powder. I know I just got done saying you don't want particles in there, but you do want baby powder in there, because what it does is it breaks the surface tension of the molten pewter and allows it to flow just a little bit better. Here I'm using some duct tape to hold the mold closed and in the shape I want it to be, and then I cover that with aluminum foil so it doesn't catch on fire. And then I base that on some other aluminum foil, tape it closed with just a small piece of duct tape, and then make myself a little better protection, because I'm doing this on a workbench with a hardboard top, so quite flammable. In fact, all the rest of this video where I'm using heat, that's all really unsafe and you shouldn't follow what I'm doing. Typically I'll do this on the garage floor, but as far as camera setups and lighting and all that, I just went with the same setup. So here I've got a single burner, electric burner that I got off of Amazon, a cast iron pot with a bunch of pewter scrap in it. And to the left there is actually a graphite crucible, which is way bigger and sort of overkill for this type of a project. Now I'm melting all this stuff down with MAP gas, not because I can't do it with the burner, but because I'm super impatient. So if you want to do it with a burner in a pot, you absolutely can. You could do it with a steel pot. You could do it with any sort of pot that's got a higher melting temperature than pewter, which is pretty low. And you don't have to use MAP gas or propane or anything else to speed it up. I just did. And all that slag and extra stuff that was on and in the pewter scrap is smoking up and turning into slag or dross, whatever you want to call it. And so you kind of scoop that stuff off the top, and it doesn't heat up as fast around the edges of the pot, so you gotta kind of put some extra heat there and move things around and continue to scoop it out until you get sort of a mirror appearance. Now it's ready to pour. Something to note about pewter is it shrinks a bunch. So as it's cooling, it will shrink downward and inward into a mold. So it sort of creates, well, it's not downward and inward, it's downward and outward is a better way of saying it. So it will fill up your mold and all the detail of it, but if there's sort of like a central column, it will shrink down into that. And so sometimes what you wind up having to do is pour and then wait for it to start cooling a little bit and shrinking in the middle, and then pour a little bit more, and that'll fill that void. But if you're trying to make something structural, which you shouldn't be out of pewter anyway, but if you're trying to make something, strong, or you're making a piece of bar stock to turn in a lathe or something, you gotta remember that part's gonna be weaker. So there you can see the Mercy key did not come out. It's pretty close, the key shaft and the bow are pretty good, but the bits just aren't. And it's because there's little air pockets down in there. They get trapped in there. So if you guess the Mercy key is the one that's not going to work, you win. Although I don't know what you win, because it's pretty disappointing. That being said, I did figure out pretty much immediately after that what I did wrong. So I just need to connect the bits of that key to some venting, and I will try again with another mold. The beauty of pewter is, even if you totally mess it up, you can just try again. Melt it down one more time and give it another shot. So here comes out number 2, and it's slightly better. It's actually got the tension section filled out, but again, the bits are not filled out all the way because little bubbles got in there and prevented it from coming out just right. I think I try one more thing. Yeah, so I'm cutting open the end of it at the tip of the key. Because what I'm seeing here, before really thinking about it, I'm just going at it. What I'm seeing is that the bow looks awesome. It's picking up even the detail of the etching, the serial number in the key, like perfectly. So I figure, well, let me put that at the bottom and put the part that matters with the bits at the top, and I should get the reverse effect, right? All the detail will fill out. But it doesn't matter which way you pour it, because there is a lateral shelf where those bits exist. Bubbles form, period. So you have to vent them or it just isn't going to work. And also I tried to cap off the bottom of a cut open mold with a bunch of an aluminum foil. So that doesn't work at all, and you'll see that in a second here. So I let the pewter get cold, and now I have to remelt it, breaking out the map gas again. As you can see, I put on the heat glove to pour, but I didn't have it on that whole time that I was sloshing molten pewter around with a spoon. Really bad idea all around, so don't do that. If you're going to mess with this process at all, if you're going to mess with molten metal in any of its forms, even the low temperature ones, wear heat resistant gloves. That's good advice that I should have followed myself. I know better, but a lot of times I get going on a project and I just refuse to stop, and I don't think about each step nearly enough. So I lost a middle section of video, and I apologize for that. I was trying to show this whole process sped up, but a portion of it did not work, so I think the file corrupted and I lost it. But basically what you're looking at here is the other two key molds. So I've got the Master Lockout Tagout and the Paris Fontaine both sitting there. I just poured both of them. I don't remember which one I pull out first. So this is the second time I poured the Master Lockout Tagout, and you can see it didn't fill up at all. This is the first pour that I lost the video for, and that thing works. It doesn't work super well. You have to push it in and kind of jiggle a little bit as you turn, but it is a functional key, which is pretty cool, I think. And it picks up pretty good detail on it too. Should have slowed down the video at this point, but again, I'm trying to get out as much content as I can. So I'll get better as I get back into practice. It's been a while. It's been, you know, half a year since I've been making videos, so you'll see them improve with time. And here I'm pulling out the Paris Fontaine. And this one actually is functional. It's got a lot of sort of bubbling on the surface. And I think what happened there is I didn't heat up the mold. I didn't heat up any of these molds on the first pour. But I also didn't put any sort of baby powder in that one. And you can see what happened. I got a bunch of micro bubbles on the surface. So I wound up with a functional key that's actually really cool to look at. It almost looks super old and pitted. Like if I were to color it with some shade or, you know, watered down paint, it would look super old and, you know, just naturally pitted. But anywhoosly, it works, and that's all that matters. There's the two side by side, the actual key and the copy. So hopefully this was an interesting thing for you to watch. I know I didn't do a great job slowing down the video or editing, or probably even dubbing over it at this point. But this is like the second or third time I've tried to record this. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. And I know from experience watching YouTube videos that when people honestly just ask me straightforward to subscribe, I do it. So please subscribe. I've got a bunch more videos headed your way. And as always, happy picking.